Babe, you've had an opportunity to counsel a number of women who have gone through difficult times in their marriage.
Sure.
And I know one of the things you always talk to them about is make sure you get right to Facebook and Insta when you need advice on what to do in your marriage.
Totally.
There's just look, there's paid counseling and heart care and the church and all that stuff. But if you want solid biblical counseling,
You should totally look for it on social media.
I mean, is there anywhere else to
Nope.
go? Right. End of the show. Thanks for showing up.
Yep. Good to talk to you. Have a nice day.
All right. So if you want to talk more about that,
Let's
we'll get into that right now.
Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock,
I'm Nathan Warnock.
and you've reached us for Marriage Monday on the Marriage by Design podcast.
That's the one.
And this is a time where we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about marriage and relationships, and then how we practically live that out.
That's right. So today we're going to talk about actually something that you found
Right.
on Facebook as you were scrolling through. And of course, we're not going to name any names or any of that kind of thing. And actually, in this case, nobody would know the person anyway because it was in a group that you're a part of. So if you don't know, Andrea is a Sahum. Right?
Yes.
Isn't that what they are? A
Yes.
Sahum.
Yes.
What's a Sahum?
SAHM, stay-at-home mom.
Right. And
Yeah, right.
the only reason I even know that's a thing is because the groups that you're in on Facebook is like SAHM Gone Wild, or I don't know.
It's
Not
definitely
sure
not gone wild, but but it's some stay-at-home mom group.
But you're part of several of these, right?
Yeah, mom groups on
Right.
Facebook, right?
Right. Which so
Generally, I don't. I'm kind of wondering why I'm even a part of it because I don't.
No,
Well,
I know why.
there-
The same reason you watch My 600-Pound Life and Real Housewives of
people's
Council
drama?
Bluffs
Maybe.
or whatever the shows are.
There are some times where it's like you get some really great like hacks. People say, "Oh my gosh, this works so great," and you're like, "Oh yeah, that would work great," or something like that. So there are times where you get good stuff.
Right. But this particular time, unfortunately, was not a good stuff.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what you saw, and then, we'll jump into kind of what we're going to cover here this morning.
Yeah, so I was looking at Facebook and this post came through in one of my stay-home mom groups, and it was this woman who said, "Hey, I'm just looking for some advice. I just found out that my husband made out with another woman while he was blackout drunk, and she talked about all the ways she feels, which of course is awful to discover."
Sure.
And she had said like she literally just discovered it, and she was like, "What do I do? Do I leave him? Do I try to work it out?" All that, and my heart just sank really when I read that because I thought, I mean, first of all, I feel so badly for her
Right.
that she's
Tragic.
found this out, but I also feel so badly that she feels like my first quote person to run to is Facebook.
That's fair.
She, I assume, doesn't have family or friends that she's close enough to that she feels like she could talk to about this. It just broke my heart that she is running to Facebook. But then my next thought was, yikes, she's running to Facebook to, first of all, post about this, but then also to seek the advice of complete strangers. I mean, this is a group of thousands of women and we're strangers to each other.
Yeah, right.
It's not like a group of my friends.
Right, which of course led you to looking through the comment section, which
Right.
was probably twice as heartbreaking as the post.
Yes. So in the comment section, it was, so many different things, but a lot of the advice was, "Oh, you should leave him. I could never get over that. You don't let somebody walk all over you. This is just setting yourself up to be a doormat. I've been blackout drunk and I would never do that. He knows what he's doing," and all the stuff. And so much of it was like yeah, leave him. Not worth working it out. You know, they have kids together, but you got to watch out for you.
Right.
Lots of those kind of comments.
Right. So what we want to talk about a little bit today is really 3 subtopics of that. The first one is, to whom should we wisely be airing our dirty laundry? The second one is, let's be really careful about the genuineness of when we ask for advice, and we'll explain that maybe a little bit more when we get there. And the second one is, who do you have in your life? If something tragic or unexpected like that were to happen to you, who are you running to? Because seems to suffice to me that she had done zero prep work for what if something horrible happened. And we'll talk about that when we get to that one too, because it's easy to watch this video or listen to this podcast and go, well, you know, of course you wouldn't plan for that. But I didn't say plan for your husband to cheat on you. I said plan for something tragic to happen in your life.
Right.
So we'll talk about that when we get there. So those are really the 3 things that we want to talk about a little bit with regards to that today. All right. So first thing we want to talk about. Now, you may have noticed that there was a bit cut out there.
If you're watching, yes.
If you're watching this on YouTube, and now Andrea has a child under her shirt. It's Jackson. So,
so awkward.
No, it's Easton. That is how filming goes with a baby.
Right.
Occasionally
that you put down who's dead asleep and then decides.
Yep, I'm not asleep anymore.
He doesn't want to be asleep anymore.
That's right. That's right. So, as we were saying, first thing we want to talk about is who you air your dirty laundry to. So it's tragic when someone takes these things, and this isn't just someone who wasn't prepared, that's a separate point that we'll talk about in a minute, but just anyone who blasts their private marriage business to the masses. Why is that a problem?
Well, there's lots of problems with that, but there's verse in, is it Titus 2, that talks about the heart of her husband safely trusts in her. And it's so important for our husbands, whether we like them in the moment or not, to be able to trust us with their dirty laundry and to not be blabbing the hardships of our marriage or where they're failing or whatever to the whole world. So being careful that we're being women who are honoring our husbands, again, even if they don't deserve it, because that's what's required of us, and giving our husbands a place where they can trust us. And think about even if that marriage were not to work out, do you really want everybody to know all the details of that? You know? And then the flip side of that is, if you're airing your dirty laundry and you end up trying to work it out, people then know your dirty laundry, and they might have a hard time forgiving the spouse that cheated. They might have a hard time having a relationship with the spouse that cheated and knowing all the stuff that went along with that.
Well, yeah, and they might just make your life difficult from just thinking you're crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine if that woman got back on Facebook tomorrow and said, "Hey, I thought about it and I've decided that, you know, my husband and I are going to try and work it out." Imagine what the comment section of that post would be.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it too. Is we actually talked to somebody recently who is in a situation where she's trying to work it out, and the world would think that you're crazy for doing that, right? And she's trying to honor the Lord and her marriage, and work that out. And her coworkers and some of her friends are saying, "You're crazy for doing that, and why are you doing that? Look what he's done, and how can you ever trust him?" and blah blah blah. And that's kind of getting in her head a little bit. But also, what do? You're in this spot where they know, and really what you need to do is shut them down nicely, but just say, "I am I'm being mentored or getting advice from other places, and it's just not anything I want to talk about.
Yeah, and strangely, when people get brought in on the details, there's this human thing where they all of a sudden think they deserve to have a say.
Right.
Instead of just... and these are the kind of people you want to find for that situation, are people that will listen, people that will give you advice based on something more than their own intellect or emotion, and people who will then step back and go, how can I support you?
Yeah.
Right? Not, how can I convince you to do this thing I think you ought to do?
And if you don't do it my way, I'm not going to support you.
Right.
We see that a lot.
Right. But how can I come alongside you and support you? Unless they're entering into a sin issue, right? We're talking obviously about marriage,
right.
restoration.
Right.
I mean, if they're choosing to do something sinful, you should not come alongside and support them in that. But, with that same couple Andrea is referring to are running into a bit of that, where the friends think they ought to get a say now in what's going on because they know it. And there are things being said like, oh, I just don't think I could ever trust your husband again. What? He's not your husband. Right. So don't trust him. Right. I don't care.
And
he's my husband.
Well, you're crazy for, can start kind of making you feel like maybe I am crazy.
That's
for
exactly
going down
right.
this road that I think is what God's calling me to.
That's right. And that leads us to a bit of a subsection of that point, which is the Bible's super clear about marriage and divorce. And divorce is a super serious thing that God hates, that he designed marriage to never end in divorce, period, regardless of the circumstances.
Right.
So do you really want to be the person whose mannerism and actions result in someone doing something that God says in the Bible he hates?
Right.
I don't, at least for me, I don't want to be that guy.
Yep.
And that really leads us to the second point that we wanted to talk about, which is, what kind of person are we when we get opportunities to see behind the veil into people's marriages? Because whether you want to or don't want to be, we're all going to have those opportunities where we have friends that share with us things they're going through, or we have maybe kids, if you have adult kids, that are sharing things they're going through. And it can be really uncomfortable. It can be really, you can feel overwhelmed and like you don't know what to do.
And it can be tempting to just use that, to just really gossip during that period.
Yeah.
Is this meant for, an uplifting time? Like somebody's seeking advice. I'm praying about it as I'm hearing about it and just wanting to give biblical advice, or is it, oh yeah, tell me more to tickle my ears kind of a thing?
Right. And the other temptation on that is, especially if they're a friend of yours or someone you're close to sort of just immediately jump on their side
and maybe badmouth
because it's uncomfortable, and you feel like, even if you feel like they have some red flags here with some of the things you're saying, so many of us as human beings have such a strong desire to avoid conflict that it's easy to go to maybe compromise what you know is right by just going, yeah, and jumping in with
right.
whatever emotions that person's feeling. And I think really that, I think, is the biggest role we can play and prepare ourselves to play now, is to remove emotion from it. Prepare yourself now that when someone comes to you and they are just crushed, how do you prepare yourself now to just go, hey, tell me about what's going on. Let's first and foremost take this before the Lord, and then let me give you some practical advice here, but don't allow the emotion to sort of be contagious and catch on to you.
Or maybe you have no advice. Maybe you don't know what the Bible has to say about that, or you're not sure what good advice looks like. Great. Then pray with that person and either suggest that you guys go to the Bible and look it up together, or let's maybe you should maybe talk to this person that I know would have better biblical answers than I would, or whatever that looks like. Don't feel like you have to give advice if you don't know, or maybe God's telling you just pray with them. That's all.
Right. And that actually leads me to a marriage by design announcement. So I've really felt, because there's a lot of people in our lives that have given us feedback that like, hey, we really want to stand up for and be champions for marriage, but we just are kind of ashamed to say we don't really know what the Bible says about marriage. So next season, which will be season 3 of Marriage by Design, will start in August after we come back from the break. And I'm only waiting until season 3 because I don't feel like we have enough time to jump into it before the end of season 2, and I don't want to come up short. So in season 3, we're going to do some practical Marriage Mondays like we do. I'll probably sprinkle a top 5 or 2 in there as well. But the bulk majority of our Marriage Mondays we're just going to go through every passage of Scripture in the Bible that we feel like pertains to marriage, and we're going to talk about them. Just one passage per Marriage Monday. It might be one verse. It might be one little section. But I think it will be interesting for you to realize how much of the Bible talks about marriage.
Or relates to marriage, yeah.
Right, or of course, or relates to marriage. And I'm hoping to create a bit of a library where, you can, as the listener, can go back and find, okay, what are some scriptures that I can go to friends with and talk about that relate to their marriage. Great. So that's what we're going to do in season 3. And again, we only have a couple of months left of season 2, so I didn't want to jump into it now, but we're going to do that in season 3 and look forward to that. And again, the hope is that you can prepare yourself to be the kind of person that can jump on a text message when you receive a text message like this Facebook post, or, I don't particularly find a lot of value in getting involved in the Facebook comment section, but if you feel led to do that, or if it's a Facebook post of someone that you care about, maybe you send them a text on the side or whatever. But we need to prepare ourselves to be directing people back to what the Bible says about marriage, as well as just the importance of marriage. If this is a friend of yours where you go, well, they're not going to care what the Bible has to say about it, there's almost zero downside to restoration in marriage outside of the Bible. Like, it's difficult, right? That's the biggest secular downside. Too. That's right.
Yeah.
And the carrot that's dangled at the end of divorce that convinces people to get through it is that they can start over. This is the great thing about marriage restoration. You talk to almost every single couple that we've seen go through restoration in their marriage, and they describe it as it's like our relationship was brand new.
Yeah.
Because you probably, if you're in that bad of a place, you probably don't even know who your spouse is, because they've become this person, and you've become this person that's crashing into each other.
Yep.
So do it. I mean, stand up for that. And prepare yourself now to stand up for that instead of on the fly. Because I know what happened. That comment section is what happens when you're not even thinking about this, and all of a sudden you see a post and you just react, right? Your fingers just start flying across the keyboard and you react. You go with your gut emotional instinct. And do you remember where that verse is, babe? It says, the heart of man is hopelessly wicked.
Yeah.
Who can know it? I think of that and I think, that's shocking. Think of that. So how often do people tell you, oh, just listen to your heart. Follow your heart. Right? And then
that's like the worst thing to do.
That's right. Biblically speaking, that's right. Because the Bible says the heart of man is hopelessly wicked.
Right.
Who can know it? Meaning no one can know it. Meaning you don't know it. Like, you don't even realize that your heart is against you.
Right.
It's crazy.
Against the Lord. Right. So you should be following the Lord's heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So don't follow your heart. Follow your relationship with the Lord and His Word, and be prepared to stand up.
And usually following the Lord when you're in a tough situation is going completely against your emotions.
Right.
And it's going against what your emotions are telling you to do.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Then the last thing we wanted to just share is just a little bit about Sometimes as human beings, we want to live in this fantasy because it's easier to just go, well, things are great and they're always going to be great. And so I don't really want to think about I don't want to think about a fire I don't want to think about a fire escape plan with my family, and I don't want to think about what do I teach my kids
life
to do
insurance.
if someone breaks into our home, or paying the life insurance premium. We don't want to think about that because it's uncomfortable. It raises uncomfortable thoughts in our minds.
Yeah, right.
Right? I get it, right? I mean, you start going down like the life insurance road and you think, well, I need Andrea and, the kids to be taken care of. But, if you're young or if you're married to someone who's hot like I am, then you start thinking like, well, yeah, but she probably wouldn't be like single forever, which is, of course, super uncomfortable to think about, but a reality of just life.
Yeah.
And so, it's uncomfortable to think about these difficult things. Well, one of those things is, how am I going to react if a horrible situation happens? And again, you might be listening to this rightfully because it's a marriage podcast going, well, what a weirdo. You're actually preparing for your wife to tell you she got blackout drunk and made out with a guy.
Well but I will say, if you've been through, like, I've thought about that. How would I react if we went through what we've gone through before?
Right.
So I think for people who've been through those sorts of things and chosen restoration, it's probably something that you think about.
Sure. It should be. Just
but in a
reaction.
way of settling in my heart, like, yeah, if it happens again, which I certainly don't live my life in fear at all that it's going to. But I've thought, yeah, if it happens again, I can trust the Lord with my heart that He can bring us restoration again. So yeah, because I've settled it at the extreme of, I know what the Lord has called me to, and I'm going to choose that every time if I had to. But that's not. I don't live thinking that. Right.
But even if you go, well, I don't want to think about that. There's a pastor in, I believe, Montana, and he and his wife went out to dinner, and their kids stayed home with his mom, and they came home from dinner, and in the living room of his mom's house, his daughter had an asthma attack and died in the scope of about 90 seconds. This was not something that was planned. I mean, she had asthma, but tons of people have asthma. Right? This is not something that they planned on. It's not something that anyone wants to think about, losing a child. But tragedy struck that marriage. And the way that they handled that is a crazy testament to the power of the Lord. But my point is, I'm not telling you should be preparing to hear that your spouse is cheating on you. I'm telling you we live in a fallen world, and almost no one is going to live a life not nudged, at least, or marred at the worst by tragedy. We all are going to have trials in this life. James, the brother of Jesus, tells us that. For some people, those trials might seem smaller. For some people, they might seem bigger. But the point is, tragedy happens. Are you preparing now for that? And specific to what we're talking about today, I would ask you, who are your support group? Because probably the most tragic part for me about this Facebook post is that her Facebook was a group of stay-at-home moms from all over the world, and that was the people that she felt like she needed to go to, was something as intimate as that. And she, if I remember right, the post said she had just found out. So it wasn't like this happened 2 months ago. She's talked to all her people, and now she's down to posting it on Facebook. No, this is like her
first thing.
That's tragic to think that someone is going through life going, my people are these folks that never think about me, don't know me, don't care to know me, just happen to come across something I might post on a forum on Facebook. Man, please don't be that. Right? If you're listening to this right now, take some time, please, and take a personal inventory of, if your wife, your husband, called you right now and said, hey, I need to confess to you I'm having an affair, or I had an affair, or hey, honey, I need to let you know our daughter died, our son died this afternoon. Whatever tragic thing you want to fill in, I know it's difficult to think about, but the crux of that is I want to put you in a position where you're asking the question, who would I call? Like, who would I talk to in this moment? And if the answer to you, as a lot of you it will be, is, well, I'd call my mom and dad, or I'd call my brother or sister. That's great, but flesh that list out a little bit. What happens if your spouse calls you and says, hey, I need to let you know your mom died this afternoon, or your dad died this afternoon? Who is your pecking order of influence, right? And we all need to have that, right? We need to be thinking ahead of, who can I go to give me solid advice when my life's at the worst? And are those people going to give me solid biblical advice in those moments, and be honest about that?
Yeah, and if it's marriage advice that you're wanting, we talk about this all the time. Man, seek out those people who are for marriage and they're for your marriage, regardless of what's going on in your marriage.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Guys, I know it's difficult to think about these things, but man, don't be that young man, that young woman that is posting it on Facebook because they feel like that's their only avenue. And I think that's really the thing that struck us, and we really wanted to push this episode out this week, is to get you hopefully thinking about who are those people I have in my life? Who are the people that we have as a couple in our lives that would help us through the worst?
Yeah, and maybe even would give you the advice that you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You know, when we're in a situation with our spouse where we maybe want to hear how awful our spouse is, or that we should leave them or whatever, but we know that's not what we should be hearing.
Right.
Are you going to seek out those people who will tell you what you don't want to hear in those moments?
Yeah.
And encourage you in God's way.
Yeah, that's good. It's good, baby. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, guys. I appreciate you being here on a Monday morning. Hope you took something away from this episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube, love to have you put a comment down in the comment section below. If you're listening on podcast, love to have you subscribe to the podcast, and also pop over to Facebook and give us a comment there that we can discuss with you. Also, we always get together live on Sunday nights, so love to have you set aside Sunday night, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. We get on and do a little live event.
Yeah.
So, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you being here. And remember, God is for your marriage. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.